I think we all, on all sides, listen to it, and I hope her colleagues on the government benches listen to it and think about it carefully during the passage of this debate. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister called this motion a stunt. That is not why I put my name to it. But it's funny, though. I was just checking whether they were awake, Mr. Speaker. But it is funny, though, because stunt is exactly the same word Boris Johnson used about the motion that the Prime Minister and I tabled 4 years ago, referring Boris Johnson to the Privileges Committee. Ironic, Alanis Morissette could probably write a whole album about it. It wasn't a stunt then, and it isn't a stunt today. It is, as the Prime Minister said back then, a motion that, and I quote, seeks to defend the simple principle that honesty, integrity and telling the truth matter in our politics. Honesty, integrity, telling the truth. These things matter in our nation's parliament perhaps more than anywhere else. And when I hear the Prime Minister complain that we've tabled this motion just over a week before important elections, I find myself transported back to that debate 4 years ago, 7 days before crucial local elections. At that time, Conservative MP after Conservative MP made exactly the same bogus argument in defence of Boris Johnson. So I do have to say, although there are differences in the whipping arrangements, I do find it very hard to take some of the sanctimony from the leader of the Conservative Party seriously. She and her Conservative colleagues propped up Boris Johnson back then. She called him a great Prime Minister, and even after the game was up and Johnson was gone, she dismissed the Partygate scandal and called it overblown. So it does seem there's quite a lot of hypocrisy to go round, Mr. Speaker. But I want to try and be consistent. So I look back in Hansard at what I said back then. And I was struck that I can use exactly the same words today. With families facing the deepest fall in the living standards since the 1950s, with the pain of energy bills and rising food prices compounded by the government's unfair tax rises, we know that our constituents are facing real hardship. It's not just a cost of living crisis, it's a cost of living emergency. At such a time, the country needs a government that will be focused on tackling that economic emergency. Crucially, it needs a government that it can trust. Labour members agreed with me back then. I hope they will still agree with those words now.
Well, it is a huge day, an enormous day of enormity in Westminster. Let's get the thoughts of our political editor, Christopher Hope.
Enormous. You use the word enormous almost as many times as they use the word pressure this morning.
Gigantic.
Pressure.
Gargantuan.
It is big, though. It's so rare that we have this kind of detailed evidence session lasting 4 or 5 hours, and then MPs go and debate what was discussed in that evidence session straight away with a vote on whether MPs believe the Prime Minister at the end. It's an unusual day of everything working in the right order and drama later today. For me, the jeopardy for the Prime Minister is in this vote today, the Privileges Committee motion here. And it says this simply: is it right that due process was followed, as to why the Prime Minister said 3 times? Was it followed? And is it the case that there's no pressure whatsoever in relation to this case? Now, on the issue of due process, you heard Philip Barton there literally saying, I'm dodging that question. Morgan McSweeney, I'm not sure he was asked the question, McSweeney, definitively, but he made clear that this is how it happened, hadn't happened before that much, and it was a bit messy. On the issue, though, I think on no pressure whatsoever, there clearly was pressure on the Foreign Office to get this done. Whether that meant skipping security questions or not is a moot point. It hasn't been answered by Barton. And we heard there from McSweeney saying there's pressure every day. We want to make the country better, move faster. So it was a time pressure, not a make shortcuts pressure, because the shortcuts meant that the issues of Mandelson weren't picked up.
He drew a strange analogy to a taxi driver on the way to an airport.
Yes.
Where he was saying, it's OK to tell your taxi driver you must catch this plane and you must go quickly, but it's not OK for them to jump red lights. I assume he was trying to say that he was saying get this done in time for Trump's inauguration, but don't skip over elements of the process.
And we had some details filled in on why Mandelson. It seemed to be mainly because he was the European Union Trade Commissioner back in the noughties when the last PM, the Labour PM was in charge, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. That's why he was keen to make it happen. Also, some interesting lines about the stolen mobile phone. For the first time, we've heard Morgan McSweeney say what we all knew, which is the disappearing messages setting on WhatsApp WhatsApps existed and did exist for Peter Mandelson's phone. Quite how that means that the text which on the reshuffle back in September will still be there in February this year when he lost his job, I don't know. It may be that they were preserved, or you can do a longer period before disappearing messages are turned on. We got a feeling for how Mandelson pushed himself back into the reckoning. One of the questions was, who pushed Mandelson forward for the job? Mandelson did. I mean, he was the person keen to get back involved and be the UK ambassador to Washington.
The one thing I didn't really get clearly was, I mean, at one point McSweeney said it was very clear to me, after saying, yes, I believe Peter Mandelson, I thought he was telling the truth, and then he went on to say, it became very clear to me that he wasn't telling the truth. So then did he go and tell his boss, i.e. Keir Starmer, that that was his opinion? That wasn't made clear, and that's the one killer question, surely. Did you have this conversation with Keir Starmer?
Yes, and that wasn't a minute conversation either. And then latterly, only in September last year, did the scales fall from his eyes, as it were, and he recognised that what had been told by Mandelson, according to McSweeney, wasn't entirely what the truth was of the relationship with Epstein. At one point, he said that Mandelson presented himself as a passing acquaintance of Epstein, when in fact it was much more, and that's revealed, of course, in the JP Morgan releases through Bloomberg in that September, and then, of course, the Epstein files in February.
It was in the front pages of at least 2 newspapers around the time as well.
That's right.
Obviously, it's not like the Prime Minister.
As I say,
newspaper.
But all this, I mean, it's very good and fascinating stuff from this morning. It all hangs down. What do MPs think? Do they think that due process was followed? Again, the jury is out on that. And was there no pressure whatsoever? And whatsoever is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, because I think there was pressure of some sort.
Everyone's admitted there was pressure.
Well, I agree.
This is the extraordinary thing.
Based on this, I mean, and today, by the way, should be a free vote tonight. It was with Boris Johnson and Partygate when he didn't knowingly know about the part that took place. He was away and he believed what he was told at the time. Do you believe him when he says that? Labour MPs being whipped to oppose this motion. Now, that is very rare. It shows a degree of nervousness, I think, amongst the Labour whips. They're not sure they'd win his own party.
Well, this government, despite its enormous majority, despite the fact that it won 411 seats in 2024, just the scale of that majority is so large. Despite that, the government has lost votes in this House of Commons before. It lost when it tried to reform welfare. It has been very worried that perhaps it doesn't know its MPs as well as it thought it
takes around 80-odd MPs to do so, and that's ironically the same number which would need to trigger a leadership election against Keir Starmer. So these numbers matter.
But this shows an incredible nervousness on behalf of the Whip's office and on behalf of the Prime Minister. Reportedly, even loyal MPs getting phone calls from the Whips late last night, getting them to try and support the Prime Minister. I mean, this is a last-ditch... Do you remember when the operation to save Boris Johnson was sort of save big dog? I'm not quite sure what the analogy for Keir Starmer is. Save plastic bollard, perhaps. I'm not sure.
Yes.
But it does seem there's an operation.
Yes, there is an operation, and it's very rare to make it a three-line whip. I'm heading to Parliament now, find out what it's called for you, Tom. I'll be asking around what is the operation to save Keir Starmer.
I should say Meep, perhaps.
Meep, maybe. And for GB News viewers and listeners, we have a fantastic live blog where all of the evidence from both these key witnesses, Philip Barton and Morgan McSweeney, is laid out there to read. It is absolutely fascinating. It's a day unlike I can remember covering politics.
But just one thing many people are asking, who are watching and listening today, is how can you get to the bottom of this when MPs are being forced, because that's what a whip means, isn't it? You either vote like this or you lose your job, basically. When they're being forced to back the Prime Minister, when, as you've just been discussing, many of them don't believe him, full stop. And
that's why the vote should go through tonight, because you won't have 80-odd MPs rebelling against the whip, risking their future in the Labour Party under Starmer. The only reason why that would happen is if they think Starmer